Hey folks, thanks for listening to this podcast, Here to Learn. My name is Matt Edwards and I'm a current high school teacher. And this podcast is just conversations that I have with colleagues or folks that are around education that I've learned from that I just find fascinating, and they have interesting perspectives on education. And I wanted to share those conversations with you. This first episode is with Austin James. He's a math teacher and baseball coach at Millbrook High School. He's a graduate of NC State University. He was a teaching fellow. He went to Wake Forest University and earned a master's degree and was part of a year-long Future Teachers cohort there. Austin was the 2015 Millbrook High School Teacher of the Year, and he was a Wake County Public School System Teacher of the Year finalist. This is my conversation with him. We got to talk about his background and journey into education. We get to talk a little bit about keeping high quality teachers in the profession, and how do we get new high quality young men and women to get into the field of education, and what can we do to excite them and to identify them. And I'm hoping that some of these things that we talk about excite you and get you kind of thinking about ways that you can connect with the future teachers of America. Enjoy it. One of the things that I tease you a little bit, I mean, we're friends. I've known you for a little while. One of the things I tease you, but I think I tease you because I admire it a bit. You were a valedictorian in high school. How much? You see, you're giggling about it. I think it's amazing. But like, how much was that? How important was that to you? Was that something that was a goal that you set? Did you feel pressure? Was it competitive?
No. Felt no external pressure really. I mean, my parents obviously wanted me to do well in school, but I don't remember a single time where they asked me like, "How'd you do on the test yesterday?" Or, there was no log in and check your grades when I was in school. Maybe they would occasionally ask, "How's it going in your classes?" But I don't know if it was intrinsic or if I just liked the feeling of doing well. I mean, I really liked, like I said, actually liked school and liked learning and liked interacting with teachers. So I think the grades was more of like a byproduct of my genuine interest in school and in the classes I was taking. I didn't really feel any external pressure at all.
Did you feel any competition with peers? Did you have like a group of kids when I was in school? I felt like I took all the same. Like, there was the same group of, like, maybe 50 kids that were in most of my classes. And, I knew
that's
some
true.
of...
I went to a pretty small school, so, I mean, there were a lot of kids that were kind of in the same boat, like, super involved, try to be good in school academically. I don't feel like you ever felt competitive, though. But, I mean, I'm getting old. Maybe my memory's just looking at it through rose-colored glasses. But I remember the same group of people being kind of involved in a lot of the same things. But do I remember like, what'd you get on this? I got to get a higher score than... No, I don't remember that at all.
When, so, one of the things that Wake County's gotten rid of is class rank. Valedictorian's not really a thing anymore. I think at our school we do summa cum laude, magna cum laude, things like that. And I think there's still some kids trying to figure out what that means. But, how do you feel about that? Do you think that's taken some of the excitement away, or do you feel like, have you benefited from being a valedictorian? Is there like a society or something?
My only benefits have been getting to hear you bring it up over the years. I wish I could remember the moment that you somehow found out about that, and I would have made sure that didn't happen.
Well,
that's a good question. I really don't know. I don't really feel negative about that change. At least not my initial impressions. Again, it doesn't come up very often in my life except in interactions with you for the most part. I do distinctly remember in signing up for classes having the worry of, man, that it would be cool to take that class, but it would negatively impact my GPA. And I think that's tragic. now, especially in a place like Wake County, there's so many options for courses you can take that kids that are super driven academically just don't take because of the hit that it's going to have on their GPA, which sounds silly, but systematically, kids are competing for scholarships and they want to get into the college they want to go to, and I get all of that. So I think maybe taking away some designations could help in that regard. I mean, especially in education, change is really difficult. So I get it. People are up in arms about it. There's a lot of negative reaction to it. But I think if it allows kids to worry less about a number and more about, man, I want to branch out and take this horticulture class. I've never done anything like this in my life. If it influences kids in a way that convinces them that it's okay to take some of those classes that aren't thought of, right or wrong, to be quite as quote-unquote academic, then I think it's a really good change. And I think in a few years you'll see that starting to happen.
When you were coming out of high school and you were looking colleges, scholarships, and things, what where were you thinking you were going to go? Did you always have a plan in your head? The next 5 years, 10 years are about to look like this?
My father went to NC State, and I grew up a huge NC State athletics fan. So I think in the back of my mind, I always knew, man, there is a great chance that this is where I'm going to end up. When you get to be a senior and you start considering where am I going to spend the next 4 years, I think everybody kind of gets really excited and ambitious about, like, where could I get into? What are the options for the next 4 years? So I applied to a lot of schools. Some like really, what's the word I'm looking for? Highly regarded academically, but I think in the back of my head I always knew I was going to go to State, and I think State is a really highly regarded academic school as well. It was a dream of mine to win the Park Scholarship. We just had a winner in my class the other day, and I was a finalist. That was great. That fell through, and I was really disappointed about that, but it opened up an opportunity to do teaching fellows, which is something I had in the back of my mind, but at that point I hadn't settled on being a teacher. So I was lucky enough to win that scholarship, and that's what kind of solidified. I don't know at that point. I don't know if I knew I wanted to be a teacher. Kind of solidified my career path. So that was huge, that scholarship, and that's been a hotly contested program over the last few years politically in North Carolina, but that was a driving force applying for that. But yeah, I mean, just like every senior does, I was applying for scholarships, seeing what schools I could get into. I probably applied for 5 or 6, all said, but I think I always knew like NC State is where I'm going to end up. I remember hearing about teaching fellows and was intrigued by it, but it wasn't at the external push of anyone. It was because I really liked my teachers, and I thought like that it was cool that they had a job where you could help kids learn, and that sounds kind of cheesy, but then you could also impact them in ways that are outside the classroom. Like you could lead a club or, do student government. I was really into student government. I loved that. My advisor was awesome. Still talk to her today all the time. So that was really what recruited me, was the fact that I just really liked it and thought this is a cool profession.
So if you would have got that Park Scholarship, which, yeah, it is a very prestigious scholarship, if you would have gotten that scholarship, what would that have changed?
I have no clue. No idea. I guess it's really cool to look back and think, would I even be teaching? I don't know. I may have. It wasn't that I had no desire to teach until Teaching Fellows was a thing. I just kind of hadn't really decided what senior really knows. I guess there are a few seniors in high school that really know what they want to do with the rest of their life. I also double majored in political science just because I loved it, and I thought I'm only going to be in college once, so I want to get as much out of it as I can. So I would have probably still done something like that. Maybe would have double majored in education. Who knows? That's a really good question.
Well, I ask you because where I want to kind of get your take on is the pressure that a lot of kids that are high level students, the pressure that they might feel to do a job or be in a profession that is more financially rewarding or maybe more prestigious, something where right now, I feel like if I tell someone I'm a teacher, they're like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
And I might even get every now and then the really condescending thank you for your service.
Yeah.
So, like, I guess for me, not as many people when I was, coming out of high school were like, wow, you thinking about where you could go to set up that med school application. Nobody was asking me that. But like you, in your situation that you were in, I guess I'm just curious on how, what was the response when you decided to take the Teaching Fellow Scholarship and kind of commit to being a teacher? Were people like, oh, that's nice? Or were they excited?
No, that's a really great question, and kind of sad, really. I have very vivid memories, even to this day, like people that I know back home, of people saying, things like, don't you want to make more money? Or my favorite all time was, you're too smart to be a teacher. Which is, I guess, a compliment, or was intended to be at the time.
I don't know about that.
A very strange thing to say. And these weren't like mean-spirited people. It's just sadly the kind of the impression of what some people have of our profession, which is kind of devastating. But you're too smart to be a teacher sounds kind of paradoxical to me. I never really had any desire to go. I thought maybe I wanted to go to law school, but just because I was interested I just liked school. It wasn't really because I wanted to be a lawyer. Never really had any interest in a doctor or any of that. But I don't know. I mean, I teach a lot of seniors, so I have conversations about this stuff all the time with students, and they get really hung up on where they're going to school, just because I guess they want to see how does my future school stack up against my peers. And we talk a lot about whatever, man. If you go to a school and you take advantage of all the opportunities that you're provided with as a student at that school, and you really dive in, and you're not going home every weekend, and you're not only texting your Millbrook friends, 99% of people are going to have an awesome experience. But yeah, back to your original question. There were some weird kind of eyebrow raising comments when I wanted to be a teacher, but I don't know, I want to do something really fulfilling, and I had such a good experience with teachers in my school that I never really thought second guessing, hey, I'm not going to make enough money. I mean, luckily we live in Wake County, so we make a decent wage. Should we make more? Absolutely, but I don't know. And some people, maybe their goal is to make a lot of money, and that's fine too. It's just what is important to you. For me, it was I want to do something that's hard and fun and really, really meaningful, in a way that I get to interact with kids. And some people want to make a lot of money and provide for their family, and who am I to judge? That's great. Good for them. That just wasn't really ever, I guess money isn't, I want to make more money, but that was never the driving force, or prestige of my job was never really the number one motivation.
Because I know you a little bit, and I know a little bit of of when the kind of the time frame is that you started out, because I got to know you because we started coaching together. In 2008 when you came on to the staff here, I was the varsity coach and you were the JV coach of our soccer team, and I remember just kind of how both of us were a little bit of deer in headlights, because that was my first varsity appointment, and you were just taking this whole thing on, and your kind of your attitude of, well, let's just see how it goes, the only one way to find out. I think that really helped our staff a lot. But something that also is burned into my head about when you started was 2008 is when the economy darn near collapsed, and it was a really, really, really rough time for young professionals. It was a really rough time for everybody in America, but it was a really rough time for young professionals because our school system, they put on a hiring freeze, a salary freeze. It felt like we actually were making less money year to year to year because costs were increasing, but our salaries weren't going anywhere. You had just gone from being a valedictorian to being on scholarship at a very good school. Then you went to grad school at, where'd you go to grad school?
Wake Forest.
Wake Forest, pretty decent university. And there you do all these things and you've got yourself prepared, and you're in all intents and purposes, you're coming to set the profession on fire. And now you're in a job where you're almost trapped in this situation where the
prospect of moving forward and earning a little bit to to kind of deal with some of those people who were critical of your choice, it almost is like your entire life was on hold for the next few years, even though you were a professional and you're on to the next thing. What kept you in the job when things were so bleak around? Because like when I think back, that was a really tough time.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I was in a way better spot than a lot of my peers that entered at the same time. So like you said, I went to Wake, so I had a master's, and at that point, master's was guaranteed supplement to your salary, so that helped. That was huge. And unlike a lot of my peers, I didn't have any college debt. Just thankful for how that worked out. So it was tough for me, but I was like in a way better spot than some people that I came into the profession with. So had I been in a situation where I had a lot of student debt or didn't have that master's bump, I don't know. Would I have stayed in? I have no idea. I think I could be off on a year or two. I think that my cohort that came in 2008, our salary was frozen for like 6 years. Maybe I'm overestimating that by a year or two, but we didn't see any increase in our salary for the first several years of the profession. At that point, I was single with no kids. Had I had a family then, I don't know that I would have stayed in. I don't know that I would have been able to like make it work financially, or at least had enough like financial optimism to hang on. But I was on fire for my job in different ways than I am now. It changes the longer you're in it, and if you have a partner or have a child, that makes a big difference. But like I said, at that time, I was just on fire. I loved work. I was here all the time with coaching. I would leave practice, sometimes go back to my classroom. So I was just really into what I was doing, trying to learn how to teach, new math classes every year. So the motivation was there, and still is, but again, in different ways. So had I been in a situation with a lot of debt, to be honest with you, I don't know. I don't know if my trajectory would have been any different. That was a really, really tough time, no doubt.
I mean, I ask you that question, also because I think about young teachers now. I'm 38. I'll be 39 this summer. I've been doing this thing for 17 years. You're 11 years in. You're no longer a young whippersnapper. I don't even know that we could even claim to be young in our profession at all.
Afraid not.
But there are folks under 30 that are very talented, that are very bright. Maybe some of them are too smart to be teachers as well. But I don't know how we're going to get those people to leave high school, go to college, and develop a plan at some point to get into teaching and prepare themselves to be teachers. And, I mean, I think you and I are on the same page that we need the experience and we need the wisdom of folks that have been in it, but we also need the energy and the excitement of new teachers. That balance, I think both of us agree that's very smart and very important for us. So I guess I'm going to ask you a little bit of a silly question, but are there any other Austin Jameses coming out of schools right now, and are they even thinking about teaching?
Well, your question, how are we going to convince or get bright young people to go into education? Well, we're not. I mean, if you look at the numbers, it's a huge issue right now. I mean, colleges of education are having to get really creative and coming up with ways to attract kids that they didn't necessarily have to or need to do in the past. I mean, I actually want to applaud our district in the Young Teachers Program that they started maybe 2 years ago, 2 or 3, where, if high school kids, bright, capable high school kids commit to teaching, then they will graduate with a guaranteed job, which is really, really smart.
Very, very exciting.
And forward-thinking.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we, that's confined to our district. Like, we got to have a lot more initiatives like that all across the state. And, I mean, honestly, now, this is just, if you just think about this as an economist, now I think we're having to rely on people that feel called to the profession, or, decide when they're, like our colleague Dale Midget, that decide when they're in kindergarten and they want to be a teacher. I always remember her saying that. like in some ways that's what we're going to have to rely on, and that is not at all good enough.
No.
We got to be able to convince people, you know, late high school kids like me or kids in college that teaching is worthwhile and can, you know, give you a sustainable income. You know, one of my favorite students I've ever taught, Michelle Anderson, just finished her first year teaching in Orange County at Cedar Ridge, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I taught her here. She went to Carolina. She did the same master's program at Wake that I did, and I've just kept in close contact with her. And she is, if you want to call it, another Austin James. Definitely took her under my wing and have tried to mentor her. Like, there got to be a lot of Michelle Andersons out there, but again, that's not good enough. Like, I was on her as a 10th grader. Like, you need to be a math teacher. And
Mm-hmm.
I stayed in her ear with that message for years, and she really loved math and liked working with kids, and so she went and did it. But we can't rely on, like, feel-good stories of, like, I see potential in you, you need to go be a teacher. At some point, the economics have to take over, and so I think it's a problem. I know my alma mater, NC State, is getting creative with some online programs that they're trying to attract people to the profession, but ultimately we've got to have help. We've got to have help from our legislature and making sure that the things that attracted people to teach in North Carolina over the last 4 decades, that some of those start either coming back or that, you know, as a state we start believing in those things again.
You know, you said that you were on Michelle early as a 10th grader. What were some of the characteristics? Like, what was it about her that caught your attention, you know, and turn that into, like, what should teachers be looking for to try to make that connection?
Well, selfishly, she reminded me of me. I've always talked, I'm sure I've said this to you many times.
I can't say that to children. They get really upset.
I love the theatrics of teaching. Like, for me, oftentimes it's way less about the content and more about, like, the stage. Like, this is a performance for the next 90 minutes. And it's a performance where I get to engage the audience. And I just think that's really fun. And I saw that in her. Like, she was fun. She was fun in class. She was really concerned about grades, but not, you know, one of those kids that's just over the top annoying about
Not obsessed.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, she wanted to do well, but, you know, if she got an 89 on a test, she's not knocking down your door saying, what can I do? Just a cool demeanor about her, worked well with her peers, liked being in front of the class, and was good at the content. And so I just thought, like, wow, her personality is cut out for this job. And of course I was looking through that of the lens of, like, what I think a teacher, you know, the best teacher looks like. And that's different for different people. So I don't know, I guess if I was talking to other teachers and saying, like, hey, you got to start finding kids that you think could be great at this job, I would say, like, what do you think are the 1 or 2 things that you or a colleague does that make you really effective? If you see that in any of your students, like, have a conversation. You know, say, like, wow, I think you could be really good at this job. Have you ever thought about being a teacher?
Oh, well, I mean, I think without a doubt. I mean, it's amazing how, you know, we all know how impressionable the kids are. So putting her in a position where, you know, she needs to, like, consider that and think about that, and she's told, like, I think I see something in you. I mean, I think that's got to go a long way as far as encouragement for, like, finding a place in the world, and I think that's super important, and, you know, I think that's a really awesome thing that kid gets to experience, and teachers have more of an opportunity to do that even than, you know, a lawyer or a doctor or something. I mean, we're around them all the time.
Yeah, just sitting here thinking, I mean, I need to do that more. Like, you know, I swung and missed on a few of those this year, kids that look like, you know, this could be something you would enjoy. It's got to be a conscious effort, because we're not to be dramatic about it, but I think we're, like, in a danger zone right now with the talent pool that we're about to be looking at as far as young teachers are concerned.
Well, I think even if we were at a good place, we should still be looking at it. I mean, you gotta invest in that. I mean, if you don't continue to think big picture about this, then, you know, we're going to land in a place where all of a sudden every teacher is 65 years old and nobody wants to teach any of the challenging courses, or nobody has the energy to spend the hours, you know, moving this thing forward. So I think that you can never stop. I mean, it's like any strong athletic program. You know, you can't afford to have years of losing so that you can replenish your talent pool. Tell me about how it was convincing you to be a teacher in high school, in math, in Raleigh? What was that process?
If I was recruited by anybody, I don't remember it, which is very possible. As far as math goes, that was a late decision of what would I teach. I really liked, in high school, I really liked English. I really liked, like we've talked about it, I'm a super nerd. I listen to, politics podcasts every day. I really liked politics and humanities. So
I don't think that's being a nerd. I think that's being afraid of what's going to happen tomorrow. So I think try not to be caught by surprise.
And I think nerds
being responsible.
Nerds a term of endearment, but I didn't know that I wanted to teach math. For me, that was more of like a practical decision, because I knew that math teachers were in high demand. Also knew male math teachers were probably in even higher demand.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked math. I was always relatively successful in it in high school anyway. So that was kind of my decision about why math is kind of boring. Like that's been affirmed over the years. I'm glad that I made that decision, but it wasn't a burning passion for math. It was a passion to teach, and then it was a decision of, hey, what am I going to teach? And I knew that would be a good career path because I would have a lot of opportunities. And then why Raleigh? Well, I went to state, and it was a financial decision. I know Wake County is one of the highest paying places in the state, and Raleigh's a great city. I loved living in Raleigh when I was in school. There's just a ton of opportunities in Raleigh that don't exist back in my small hometown. Big city-ish, but not massive and annoying, which is not something I would have been into. Like I wouldn't be a Chicago or New York City or LA kind of guy. So just big enough, but still small enough. So really cool city and decent pay.
So, you alluded, and now you would never say this, but I think, from you talking about how it's almost like our profession is waiting for people that are called into the profession. And in all intents and purposes, I'll go ahead and say it. I think Wake County's lucky that you're here. You could have easily gone back to your hometown. You could have easily gone and chased someone or gone with someone to another place. I think that, that we're kind of fortunate that you just enjoyed enough about this area to stay here and to try to figure this profession out. If I put you in a hot spot and I say, okay, you're now in charge of recruiting teachers for Wake County Public School System, specifically high school math teachers, but you could go broad if you'd like. Like, what do you think we need to do? Give me a couple of things that you would have in your plan. Maybe, I don't know how much you've ever thought about this.
Zero. So you're asking if I'm in charge of recruiting high school math teachers to this district, what do I say?
Right. Or what do you do? Or how do you convince them? Because we've already isolated or identified rather that we have a potential for a disaster on our hands as far as having a plenty of talent and excitement in our teachers, in our reserves, in who's going to be teaching in the next 20, 30, 40 years.
Well, I would sell the area, which I kind of talked about already.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a really great place to live, but the challenge in that is it's also an expensive place to live, at least relative to the rest of our state.
Yeah.
Doesn't compare to like D.C. or places like that, absolutely not. But relative to North Carolina, decently expensive place to live. So I would love to. I couldn't sell this now because it doesn't exist, at least not to my knowledge. I would love to see some kind of housing subsidy for beginning teachers, and I think that would be really doable in this area. Whether it's like a townhouse community or apartments or something. I mean, I think that would be huge and relatively inexpensive way to get like some pretty serious talent to come to this area. But another really cool thing about Wake County is all of the like entertainment and sports things that are at a fingertip in this area. I think you could do more to kind of sell, like, here are all the things you can do if we're trying to pull people, from out of state or whatever. And then I think, I don't know, I've never done any research in this, but I think it's really awesome that Wake County has such a diverse student population. And that is not true of all places in North Carolina or nationally. And I think that is something that, and maybe that is already being sold. I hadn't applied for a job in this district in 11 years, so
Yeah.
who knows. But to say, like, not only can you come live in this really cool area, but you're going to get to interact with people whose at least parents are from all over the world, of all different colors,
Yeah.
or of all different socioeconomic statuses, and I think that's one thing I was looking for. That's what drew me to this specific school that I've now been at for 11 years. So, and maybe the district is doing that, but I think that's something that could be a huge selling point for people is,
Would
experience
you-
all kind of people.
Would you ever pay or adjust the pay schedule for different subjects, levels, challenges to the job? Would you ever adjust like that, or do you think kind of the way we do it and encouraging the diversity for good people to be at all places, not just isolated talent? Would you ever adjust
Yeah.
anything like that?
I don't know. I've thought about that a lot. Either like merit pay, you get paid based on some kind of performance metric, or you get paid for a certain subject. I really don't know. That's a hard question to answer without looking at, like, again, nerd alert, any data from places that have done that before. I know Guilford County schools have done that, maybe are doing that with high school math specifically. I know some places do that, like in certain schools, high need schools. I don't know. I don't really have an opinion on that because I don't know if I got nothing to base on if that would work. And then, like, merit pay brings its own set of issues. Is competition a good thing in a school staff? Maybe not. So I got nothing for you on that. I'm really not sure.
How long are you going to stay in this profession?
Good question. I don't know. I said when I started here that I would teach for 10 years and then see what happened. And that 10 years went by in about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So here I am at year 11. So I don't know. I mean, I really like what I do. I still really like interacting with kids. I still really like teaching math. So that's a good question. I could see myself staying in the profession for 30 years, or I could see myself getting an itch and trying to scratch it and doing something different, whether it was in education or otherwise. So I don't know.
What will pull you away?
I don't know. I mean, I think it would just be like finding some really cool opportunity. I almost think for me, because again, I like what I do. I don't have this one idea in my head of something I'm like searching for.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it would have to be like some opportunity that I just heard about, or that somebody said, "Hey, this exists. I think you would be good. Good for this." Maybe like I did for Michelle, that'll happen for me one day. So I don't know. I don't know that there's not one like eye on the prize. I think it would have to be something either falls in my lap or something, somebody thinks, hey, I know a guy that I think will be really cool at this. Would something push me away? That's a different question. And I don't know. I can't see into the future. Like, this is a hard job, but to this point, nothing's been hard enough where it's made me want to leave.
Well, I think that's all my questions. You got anything you want to lay out there? You promoting anything right now?
No, I don't have a book signing.
All right,
on the
I just
calendar.
didn't know if you had anything in the hopper over there. Well, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. It's an exciting thing to do. I really, you're somebody that I've gotten to work beside and got to see you grow in this profession, and I take a lot of pride in your success that you had, and I want as many teachers to be able to get to meet you and get around you, and I feel like you do a lot of good things for our profession and for our kids. So please keep up the good work, and hopefully we'll get to do this again about some other stuff.
Yeah, sounds
All right.
great. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.